What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be going over how to create a custom alert. So usually you get the regular, UI alert controller that you see as the basic pop-up, but we want to make our own custom one, and we're going to be doing that using storyboards today. Now, before we jump into how we're going to do that, I just want to say make sure you head over to kiloloco.com, check out what's going on over here. I do have a couple of courses available, as well as the all access membership. So if you have any questions, like any code related questions or anything like that, and you want to reach out to me through Slack, that's what the membership is for. So let's dive in. Let's go over how we're going to make this application right here show up a custom pop-up when we hit subscribe. So let's go over to our project. And if you want the project files, the starter and the finished project files, link will be in the description. You can download those for free. Yeah. So as you can see, we have our view controller all set up. We have the emoji label connected. We have the subscribe button connected as an outlet and as an action. So we have all of our UI set up. Now what we want to do is we want to actually show an alert. So what we're going to actually do is, since we're using storyboards, I'm going to create a brand new storyboard because we don't want our alert feature set to be combined with any other feature sets outside of alerts. So let's go ahead and create a new storyboard for our alerts. All right, so now that we have our alert storyboard, what we want to do is we want to add a UI view controller. So we're just going to add that bad boy right on top of there. And before we get into any of the UI, I just want to make sure that we have a view controller that's associated with this scene. So what we'll do is we'll also add a view controller. So let's do that now. All right, so we have our alert view controller, which is going to be associated with our new scene on our new storyboard. Let's jump back over to our alert storyboard. We'll select this view controller. First, we're going to go to the attributes inspector, say, yes, this is the initial view controller. Also, we want to go to the identity inspector, say, yeah, this is associated with the alert view controller. I'm also going to give it a storyboard ID so I can create an instance of this scene or this view controller, and we'll call it alert VC. So yeah. Next, what I want to do is I want to select the view, and we want to make sure that when we have this pop-up over whatever our screen is, we want to make sure that it's transparent everywhere else except for the actual pop-up that we're reading from, right? So it should be like dimmed over, everything around it should be dim, like all this space around it should be dimmed, right? So let's go ahead and make sure that our background color, we'll choose a custom color. We're going to slide this all the way over to black, and then we'll set the opacity 35%. Now, depending on what you want your UI view, what you want your alert to look like, we're gonna customize it to, you would have to customize it obviously different than the way that I'm gonna do it. But what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll try to make it look a little bit nice, and then you can customize it from there once you see how it's done. So let's open up our object library. We're gonna have a container view that's right here. And right now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna center it, and we're gonna add some constraints. Horizontally and vertically in the center, make that bad boy nice and centered. Then what we want to do is we want to set a width, because we want the width of the alert to be the same on all screens, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone. We want it to be the same size, right? So I'll just set this to about 275. I know that's big enough to stay within the bounds of every single screen, even like a iPhone SE, right? So now we have almost all the constraints that we need on this to be perfectly fine. What we're getting this red line for is because we don't have a height. And what we're going to actually end up doing is we're going to allow the body of the alert decide how big the alert view container should actually be. So if you have a long message, it's going to have a big body, or it's going to be a bigger alert, a taller alert. If it's a short message, it's going to be a shorter alert. So that's why we're going to leave the height constraint undone so far. So we'll just stretch it out just so that we have some room to play. And what we need to do, or what we can do, is start customizing the way that our alert looks. So I'm going to open up the object library. I'm going to bring in another UI view. And what I'll do is I'll just say, I think that's going to look good. So I want to change the background color. I'm going to change it to this nice purple. Hey, that works. I'm going to set the constraints on this view. So 0, 0, 0. And then we want to have, let's say the height is equal to 60. That looks good to me. So that's perfectly fine. Next, what we want to have is a title that goes in that little header view. So we'll grab a label from our object library, drag that bad boy right on in there. We're going to set the constraints on this one. We'll say constraint to margins, and we'll just put 0 all around so that it's nice and stretched out. Ooh, nice and stretched out. And then what we'll do is we'll set the color to white. Now I also want this to be a little bit bigger, so I'm gonna set it to about 24, looking good. And I'll just say that this is going to be the title. Next, what I want to do is I'm gonna have a body for our alert. And so that's going to be a label. So we want to add that label on right now, and this will be our body. But I'm not going to do anything to this label yet. I'm not going to add any constraints because we should get the buttons in here first. So let's go ahead and open up the object library. I'm going to grab a couple of buttons. So just 2 regular buttons, just one, and then whoa, what's going on here? Let's stretch this bad boy out a little bit, and then I'm gonna option, what is it? I'm using a different keyboard. Anyways, I'm gonna make a duplicate of the button, and this one will be our cancel button on the left, and I want the text color to be white, but I want the background color to be, let's say, light gray. Sure, why not? Looks kind of ugly. Actually, I don't want that gray color. Let's do slightly less gray. There we go. Cancel. That's a little bit better at least. Jeez, that was so ugly. All right, and then we want the action button, whatever our primary action button to be. Let's change the color of that one. This one's, I'll just call this one action, because we're gonna have the ability to rename the title of the button in our functionality. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that the text color is also white, and we want the background color, we could just have it matching this up here. Now what I could do is I can select both of these buttons, and I'll just put them in a little stack view like so. And what we can do is we can pin them to the side. So I'm going to just say constraints to margins like so, and I'm gonna say 0 from the left, 0 from the right, and let's say 8 from the bottom, maybe 0 from the bottom. All right, that's looking all right so far, but we want to change the spacing, so we'll say 16 for the spacing. And then we also want to have the distribution to filled equally so that they're the same size buttons. And then lastly, what we want to do is we want to just make sure that this body label is actually going to fill in the rest of the spacing. So let's just go ahead and add some constraints to the body label. So we're going to have 16 from the top. Actually, let's do 8 from the top. That's going to be too much if we do 16. 8 from the top, 16 from the left, 16 from the right, and then 8 from the bottom. And look at that. So now, as you can see, depending on how big the label is, the body label, that will determine how big our view is. Now you can play around with this. You can make sure that it's, a little bit bigger, smaller, or whatever you want to do. But if I enter in a lot of text right here, it's going to actually look a whole lot better. All right, so I entered in a lot of text. Oh, and I forgot to actually set the lines to 0. So there we go. And as you can see, it's creating some good spacing. Now, I think I am going to change it to 16 from the top and the bottom, just because it looks like it does need a little bit extra space. It looked a little bit cramped in there. All right, so that does look a little bit better. And now that we have all of our UI set up, this is how I'm just going to leave the button. This seems to be good enough. You guys can obviously continue to make it look better. But now that I have all that set up, I'm just going to connect it to our storyboard. So let's just make sure that we have all of these set up and connected. So I want to have the title connected. So that's going to just be the title label, the body label, the cancel action, we just want the action for this one. cancel, did tap cancel, did tap cancel. And then for the action button, we want both the action and we want the outlet. So did tap action button. And then we want the outlet so that we could change the name if necessary. So, well, obviously necessary. We don't want it to be action, right? So we'll say action button. All right, so now that we have all the UI set up, let's go back to the regular view. And then there's only a few more things that we want to do while we're still on the storyboard. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure, one, that our view controller is selected. So make sure that the yellow, this little yellow thing is selected for the view controller. And what we want to do is we want to go over to the attributes inspector and we want to change the transition style to cross dissolve. And then we want the presentation to be over full screen. So let's go ahead and add that, and that will determine how our alert is actually presented. So before we actually go through and make this more dynamic so that we can reuse it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we can actually display what we have so far. Now, I'm not going to do it in here because that would be bad practice. I'm actually going to create an alert service that will create this alert for us and display it for us. So let's go ahead and create a new file called alert service. All right, so now that we have our alert service, which we're gonna obviously be using UIKit in order to do this, because we're gonna be calling another storyboard. We need to initialize another UI view controller from another storyboard. So that's why we need UIKit. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna have a function in here called alert, and it's going to present, it's actually gonna return an alert view controller to us so that we can present it in whatever view controller we're currently in. So let's go ahead and write out that function real quick. All right, so as you can see, now that I have this function on our alert service called alert, what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the alert storyboard now. I actually would normally just name this alert.storyboard, but I guess it added storyboard in there for me. Anyways, whatever the name of your storyboard is, that's what we're gonna type in right here. And we're just gonna grab it from the main bundle. And what we'll do is we're gonna access the alert VC by instantiating a view controller with the identifier. Remember, we added alert VC as the identifier on the storyboard, and we're just going to force that. We're going to force cast that as an alert view controller. Now, the only reason why this would not work is because our storyboard and our view controllers aren't matching up. So there shouldn't be any problems for force casting it. If it does crash, it would happen during development. There shouldn't be any other reasons why this wouldn't work. But if you want to do a guard or an if statement, then by all means. But anyways, all we're going to do is we're going to get that alert VC and we're going to return that alert VC. So let's go back over to our view controller and create an instance of our alert service so that we can display it. All right, so now that we have our alert service, all we need to do in our did tap subscribe is just say alert service dot alert, and that's going to actually give us back the alert view controller that we need to present. So we need to say let alert VC equals that, and then we'll also call present. So we're getting that alert VC and we're presenting it like so when we hit that subscribe button. So let's go ahead and run it and see what we got so far. All right, so we have our app, and then when we hit subscribe, we get that dimming effect. We also get that, you'll notice that I can't hit anything else around here. And then we have our title, we have the body, and then we have the two buttons. Now, right now, nothing happens when we hit the buttons. So one thing that we do know needs to happen is that when we hit cancel and action, regardless of what they do, both of them need to dismiss. Now, that's all that the cancel is going to do, but the action button is going to dismiss and then run some code. So let's go ahead and add that dismiss functionality real quick. All right, so we're going to go back over to our alert view controller, And we're just going to say did tap cancel, and we'll just call dismiss, and we'll say animated true. And then we can just call the same exact thing over here on our action button. So let's run that again, see what happens. All right, so when we hit subscribe, we're going to see that it fades in quite nicely. We hit cancel, it goes away. Hit subscribe, we hit action, it goes away. Perfect. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to make our alert show the information that we need to show it for this particular time in our app. So we want to say subscribe, and then it will say, please, like something in the body where it says, please subscribe to the channel, blah, 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 right? So let's go back over to our view controller. And what we want to do in our alert view controller is add in some properties that can be manipulated. So these are going to be variables so that we can change their value. And then what we'll do is we'll have a function that will set those values to what's going on with the labels. So let's create the variables first. All right, so we have three variables. We have one called alert title that's going to modify the alert title label, alert body, that's going to be obviously the body, and then action button title, so obviously the action button's title. Now what we want to do is we want to have a function that's going to set these properties, the values of these properties, to each of the text properties of these labels and set the title for the button. So let's add that in and call it in the view did load. All right, so as you can see, I added the setup view function, which is being called over here in the view did load, and we're setting the title, we're setting the body, and we're setting the title of the button all in here. Now, since we have these properties, these variables right here, what we can do is we can go back over to our alert service and we could enter in different values for each of these properties. And what we want to do is in this alert, we'll actually have arguments that will correspond to what we're going to call, what we're going to pass into those properties in our alert view controller. So let's add that now. All right, so as you can see, we added those three arguments, and all we're doing is we're passing in the values straight from here, from these arguments, and we're passing them in directly into our alert VC. So now, since we've modified the signature of our alert, if we were to go back over here to our view controller, we're actually going to see that we're going to get a compile error saying that, hey, this is no longer the way that you call the alert function, so you actually need to update it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the fix it, see if it adds them all in. It won't, so I'm just going to go ahead and do alert. Let's go back over to the alert service. Let's Command S to save it, and then now we'll get the autocomplete working again. So now we have the title, and I could just say subscribe, and we'll just say subscribe ? And it'll be please subscribe to the channel if you found this helpful, right? And then what we'll do is we'll just call the button subscribe, or we'll call it confirm, just to show that it's something a little bit different. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run this again, and all the information that we're passing in should automatically be updating our actual alert. So when we hit subscribe, we actually see that the information that we're passing in is being updated. So we have the new title, we have the new body, and then we have the confirm button. Now cancel dismisses and confirm dismisses. So the last piece that we need is we actually need to be able to modify what happens when we hit confirm. We want to be able to have an action happen once we hit confirm. So let's go ahead and add that in. What we'll do is we'll go back over to our alert view controller, and there's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could do this with delegates. You could do this with notifications. I'm going to choose, because I personally like it, I'm going to choose to use a callback or a closure, however you want to call it, in order to fire this, in order to trigger the functionality when this button happens. So let's go ahead and add in a callback called button action. All right, so this is a closure in case you're not familiar with it. And all this is going to do is it's going to allow me to call a function or run some type of code whenever it's called. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the button action is actually going to be called inside of this did tap action button. So we'll just go ahead and we'll do it after the dismiss, like so. And we'll say button action. And since it is an optional property, we need to do a question mark and then we need to call it. Now, if you guys are confused on this syntax, just let me know and I can do a complete video explaining what's going on with callbacks and how to use them. So now what we want to do is, once again, we'll go back over to our alert service and we're going to say alert VC, which now has a button action value. And what we want to do is we actually want to pass it whatever action is going to be called from wherever this alert function is going to be called. So let's go ahead and add another argument, which is going to be called completion, and it's going to take in a closure. All right, so as you can see, I added this new argument called completion, and it's going to be of type closure, and it's at escaping because it's going to happen sometime after this code has already been after all this code has already been ran. It's going to be called sometime after that. So that's why we're using at escaping. So now this will automatically be tied to the button, the action button being pressed. Now, if we go back over to our view controller, we're going to get another error, another compile error saying, hey, this isn't updated. And all we need to do to fix that is just add on a closure at the end of this call and do whatever we want. So if I want to just print out something right here to make sure that it's working, I could just say, you tapped the action button, baby. Like so. And now if we go ahead and run this, not only will the confirm button actually dismiss the alert, but it will also print out that statement in our console, which we can see right on here. You tapped the action button, baby. So now I can trigger whatever action I want after we hit that confirm button. So I'm just gonna have it update my emoji label to a smiley face because you just subscribed. Oh yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and, since we're in a closure, we're just gonna take a reference to weak self. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say self.emojilabel.text is equal to, and we're going to add in a new emoji. So we'll just say this one. All right, let's run that one more time and let's make sure that everything's working as expected. All right, so as you can see, we're at the meh face. We hit subscribe. If we were to hit cancel, nothing happens. It just dismisses our error. Or not our error, but our alert. And then we hit subscribe. And if we confirm, we get the updated. We get whatever action that we wanted to happen. So that's all. That's how you make your own custom alerts. I hope that you guys found this useful. Obviously, you can modify your alert to look however you want. It's mainly just getting that information or getting it to the point to where you guys can make it customizable. So I think with the storyboard, it makes it super easy. All you have to do is just go back over to your alert storyboard, start modifying it, adding different colors, adding, rounded corners or whatever you want to do. And then you just use an alert service like this to add in dynamic functionality so that you can just call it wherever you have access to an instance of an alert service. So you just have one of these bad boys in your view controller, and guess what? Now you could create alerts on the go. Super nice, super simple, super sexy. So that's going to be all for today, guys. Thanks for checking out the video. Hope you liked it. Hope you learned something new. Now go out there, keep coding passionately.